It's been a while since I've taught class. I've got the little nervousness and excitement. I'm excited about it. If you want, you can black the screen by pressing B. There you go. Did you guys get an email from me today? Okay, great. Quick question. How many of you have been married for under a year? Would you raise your hand? 1, 2, 4. Okay, how many a year or 3? Okay, a few more. All right, how many 4 to 8? Okay, got a few in there. All right, how many 9 to, what's the number? 12? All right, any more than that? All right, that's what I like to see. Good. What I'd like to talk about tonight is singing or knowing what you're singing. That's kind of my concept of what this class is about, understanding what you're singing, seeing the depth of what your song is that's been selected by whoever was teaching the class on a given time. And I thought about going through and kind of just doing what ended up being reading of the dictionary of different things that we'd see in songs that weren't familiar. And I thought, wow, I'm boring myself, and I need to figure something else out that I won't be bored with. Because whenever I teach, whenever I preach, it's not going to be done or taught or preached if I'm bored with it. So I will make sure I'm enjoying it. And then if I'm enjoying it, well, I just know you'll enjoy it, right? So I'd like to talk about Vows. And the song, or 2 songs that I've selected, one song was kind of marginal, but very good fitting, but you just can't fit it all into the nice time we have. The first song that we're going to sing after the class, as in at about time marker 35, 7:35, is My Jesus, I Love Thee, because we're going to be talking about vows, and I think that song is one that is a good searching of the heart of where you've been, where you are, and where you need to be if you're not there yet or not been there in a while. And then Ryan's going to lead that for us, and then Jim is going to lead us in a song following that of I Am Resolved. And those are going to fit into the scheme that I have of understanding your vows. Resolving to vow is going to be my first point. Why would you vow in the first place? And then remembering your vows is my second point. And then my third point is don't look. Remembering or resolving to vow, remembering your vows, and I gotta look, sorry. Renewing your vows. So kind of dovetailing with remembering. Okay, so let's paint the scene in just a second. Let's go to our God in prayer. Great Father in heaven, we thank you so much that you are so long-suffering for us, and that you have our best interests at heart always, no matter what we're going through, no matter the struggle, and no matter the joy. We thank you so much that you give us life and that you give it to us so abundantly. Help us to never forget who we are. Help us to always remember that your word holds life for us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right, the wedding scene. The whole wedding, you're in anticipation, and then there's preparation for the wedding. People coming from all different places who mean a great deal to you and your to-be spouse. And if you're a kid, if you've gone to weddings, you are thinking, all right, party. This is great. I like parties. Hey, there's going to be cake. This is even better. And then as the day draws on, because it is a day event, right? You can really just kind of do something in the morning and kind of do something in the evening, and then the wedding, if you're going to stay the entirety of the of the wedding, it's going to take a majority of the day, and you've got to be on the whole time. You've got to be engaging with people. You've got to be smiling with people. You've got to be smiling in pictures where you're holding the smile and flexing your face for seemingly endless amounts of time. And husbands, greatest time of the day, wasn't it? Love that. And if you're a kid going through all this, you're thinking, okay, cake, when's it going to get here? This is taking way too long. My mother was not right that I was going to enjoy this, and the cake really isn't looking too appealing after this long endurance race. But as an adult, perhaps you're not the one getting married. You're in the audience, you're watching, and you're seeing these things happen. Perhaps you are already married and looking at things in a different light, understanding that these two people are coming together in a way that you've already come together, and it is very profound for you, and you begin to remember things of your wedding. You remember the person that you married way back when, and to see the person that you're married to now, and begin comparing yourself even of who you were then and who you are now. And it's all from those faithful vows that we've given. These vows that we've said to one another if you're married or if you're anticipating marriage or looking to be married someday. These are things that you are going to say to this other person and to yourself and before God and before whatever witnesses you have before you. All right, question. What is a vow? How would you define a vow? Say it again. A promise. Yes, very good. A promise. It holds a little more weight than simple declarations, right? Unbreakable. You want them to be, right? You want them to be unbreakable.
I compare it to being more like an oath.
Okay.
You're swearing to something that's a little more formal, maybe.
Yes. Okay. An oath, a little more formality, a little more depth. A little more devotion, commitment, the sense of enduring, unbreakable, as Jenny was saying, but at the same time understanding this is something that holds a lot of weight and is hard to break, or hopefully is hard to break, hopefully is, or you're longing for it to be unbreakable, right? Okay. Dictionary says a solemn promise, and for me, that just didn't cut it. I needed to add to that of how I felt when I think about vows. Okay, so here's DaveGalloway.com dictionary definition. And you might find some of the words in here odd, so just consider this a working definition. A vow is a voluntary election to take on a burden, often a very serious and time-enduring burden that is confirmed by witnesses that hold accountable, at the very least in their own memory, the vower's commitment. A vow is often paired with an if kept result. This isn't necessarily stated out loud per se, but is there nevertheless. That is to say, receiving a value in the keeping of the vow or the outcome. Okay? So I vow this to this end for this purpose. So let's just scale this way back. Let's say I was 600 pounds and I vowed to myself, I am going to lose this weight. And so what has to happen? Well, in the very nature of the definition of what I'm describing to you and what the scenario that I'm placing is that I'm going to make a change. I'm vowing to make a change. I'm not content with where I'm at. I need to do something different. So I need to either make a change or stay where I'm at in whatever vow that I'm making. If I'm in line with this vow, then I need to maintain this line. If I'm out of line, then I need to get back in line, okay? All that makes sense? All that seem fair in your assessment of vow and defining a vow? Sound pretty good? Okay. So, back to marriage. What are some outcomes to keeping your marriage vows? Some outcomes to keeping your marriage vows. Trust? Yes. And it just continues to grow. It's like a layering effect of trust. It just gets thicker and thicker and stronger as the trust continues, right? Yeah, go ahead, Luke.
A highly functioning relationship and family.
There you go. Have you made your own dictionary term here? A highly functioning, say it again. Family and relationship. Okay. I vow to not embarrass my wife like Luke has just done. No, I'm just kidding. Okay. It functions, right? When I say this, I commit this to this person or this situation, then it's working. Okay. What else? What are some good outcomes of keeping your vows for marriage?
It glorifies God.
Wow, it glorifies God. Let that simmer. So you're saying that a relationship and marriage that is vowed before God, before witnesses, before your spouse, is something that reaps reward spiritually? That's exactly right. So you think about that, and you think about, what if I break one? Not only do you go against yourself, not only do you go against your spouse, but you are finding yourself going against glorifying God. Okay? You see the weight of this. Okay, two things to keep in mind as we go here. Deuteronomy 23 and verse 21 says, "If you make a vow to the Lord your God, you shall not delay fulfilling it. For the Lord your God will surely require it of you, and you will be guilty of sin." Okay, some options upon making a vow. I have vowed, therefore I will fulfill what I have vowed, or what? Well, just thinking of the opposite of that. Or I will break it. Because you don't do anything else, like in our terminology, you don't do anything with a vow other than keep it, or it's not don't keep it. It's not, well, it fell off. It's not, well, it's got a flat. It's broken. Okay? So if we think about what Luke said of a highly functioning relationship, so when a highly functioning relationship gets off track, then it becomes broken. Okay? When your body is working properly and everything's working as it should, all your skin's intact and everything's good, what happens when blood comes out? Ooh, got a gap. Something's not working right. It becomes broken. It's not whole anymore. Okay? We feel that sometimes when in our relationships as people who are married, when we're not connected, right? The connection's not there. It's a broken link. It's not feeling connected. This can be a number of ways it can happen, okay? A number of ways that can happen. So, point number one, why make a vow? One of the texts that I want us to think about, we don't have to go there. Remember in Jonah, when Jonah's on the boat headed to Tarshish away from Nineveh, and the mariners want to keep him safe on the boat and not throw him overboard, even though he says this is what you need to do. Okay? So eventually, they obey him, throw him overboard. And do you remember what those mariners did after that? they made vows. I thought that was interesting that the text identified that. So there's another point there of when things happen to make intentional vows. I want to change, like we talked about with weight and or obesity, really. And then in marriage, you're coming together. You're not just making a vow to this person. You're expecting this other person to commit their life to you. So I'll vow this, and you vow that, and we'll come together as one with our vows before God and these witnesses before us. We see that. And look with me in Exodus chapter 21. Here's another passage of Scripture that's really interesting if you've not heard this, but this is where I had to cut out a song, Pierce My Ear. You guys familiar with Pierce My Ear? Okay, so this is where that song finds its context. Exodus 21, verses 1 through 4. Now these are the rules that you shall see before them. When you buy a Hebrew slave, he shall serve 6 years, and in the 7th he shall go out free for nothing. If he comes in single, he shall go out single. If he comes in married, then his wife shall go out with him. If his master gives him a wife, and she bears him sons or daughters, the wife and her children shall be her master's, and he shall go out alone. But if the slave plainly says, notice how the language changes here as we think about a slave and master relationship, okay, as if we think about this working relationship, okay? If the slave plainly says, I love my master, my wife, and my children, I will not go out free. What do you think about that phrase? I will not go out free. What's he saying? I give up myself. I'll kind of put it in words that I use normally. I give up my freedom. You hold my freedom. Okay, you remember in, I think it's 1 Corinthians 7, where it talks about the wife does not have control over, it's not, you're not denying one another what you vowed to one another, is the gist of what's being revealed there. You are serving one another with your bodies, where you are not your own anymore, but your spouse has your body. Okay? The text goes on to say that the master will take the servant to the doorpost. And I was trying to visualize how this would be done. An awl, AWL, if I'm not pronouncing it well enough, is pretty much an ice pick. It's just this straight down to the smallest point it can be to pierce. So an awl oftentimes was used to poke holes for sewing, right? And they were to take that, the master would take his slave and put his ear with the slave against the doorpost. And I'm just trying to visualize if it's on the corner of the doorpost, so the slave would just kind of peel his face around and get his ear turned out, so where it's easy for him to put the awl right there on his ear and just hammer it through to pierce his ear. So there you've got something that's very interesting with vows as well. Not only is there this wonderful vowing relationship, and we've talked about the wonderful relationships that we're able to have with marriages and keeping our vows. If the Lord blesses us with children, the relationship is just growing in trust and other things that go along with this teamwork effort to raise souls up, and you're glorifying God in all of this. All that's happening. And then what happens when one of you aren't holding up your vows? I'll say it that way. Well, there's pain, isn't there? And it's interesting that this piercing of the ear is a painful thing of commitment that's being revealed here. I thought that was really neat how that's drawn out for us. Okay? Anybody else ever experienced that in your marriage? A little pain in the relationship? Can you share that? I've never experienced that before. I have to confess, 99 times out of 100, the pain was because I was not grown up enough. Ever feel like that in your marriage? Oh, man. God, why is this so hard? Well, Dave, you've not done this in so long and not looked at this, and I've got you here. Now you can't wriggle out of this. You've made this commitment to me and this person that you've committed yourself to, and so what are you going to do? You've made this vow. Are you going to keep it or break it? Well, God, this is really hard, and I'm really stubborn, and I've always done it this way, and this is how I was raised, and this is what my dad did, and what my mom did, and she's not doing that. She's not doing that, what the relationship was when they were married, and when I was growing up in their house. Hey, Dave, guess what? What? You're Dave and Lauren, not your mom and dad. It's like, oh, yeah, that's right. Completely different world. Okay? Anybody have those expectations when you first got married? Yeah. That's when you go to God and He's saying, Dave, do you realize yet you've messed up in thinking this way and all these expectations that you've had? You're like, yeah. So that's when you have to remember your vows. You have vowed this. Obstacles of vows, what do you think? There is the burden of the vow, enduring the vow. Biblically, a lot of times it's time and distance. Time and distance, okay? So, go back. The Exodus. Do you remember what they said when they got up to the Red Sea? I wanted to say the Dead Sea so bad. The Red Sea. You remember what they said? I'll give you a hint. One of the words in the text is graves. What did they say? Yeah. Moses, seriously. Pretty sure there's a big plot of land for graves in Egypt. Can we go back and die there? Why do we have to come all this way to the wilderness? Because we are hopeless, we have no faith, and we are not committed to the Lord, so why'd you bring us here to die? A little pressure on them. Trust God, trust your vows, trust who's taking care of you. Wives ever have to do that to your husband? Trust him. I'm a little worried. I'm a little anxious. I don't know. He's made this decision. What do I do here? I don't want to submit. I want to do this and that and this and that and this and that. I don't want to talk to him. He's too stubborn and rebellious and da-da-da. Just like his dad. Whatever. There's that fear of conflict too, right? Rises up. Don't like that. I don't want to confront. I've got a problem. And so what do? The double S phrase, suffer in silence. I hate that. Because it's so much easier just to brew and wish the other person would change, and God, why is this not working out for me like I'd hoped for it to be? And then finally realize If I just say something, even if it comes out wrong, it'll start the resolution. Because why? Because my commitment and vow is first to God and then to you. That makes sense? You see those things? You got the fear, you got the time, you got the distance, all these things that happen. Got some pressure building up, and all these things are really opportunities to overcome an obstacle to keep your vow and build your faith. But what Satan wants of us is to just let it go, suffer in silence, let the relationship stretch away from itself, let the vow grow thin, the trust miss some layers. I'm telling you, it's better to approach a situation like that with saying, Lauren, I've really messed up. You can use another name if you'd like. I don't know how to say this. This is going to come out probably wrong. I know I'm full of whatever I'm full of right now, and it's going to be a struggle, but I know that this needs to be said. And then it's out. And then the healing process can start happening because sometimes your spouse doesn't even know. God doesn't even know. Well, God knows. But when we confess to God, we don't know until we confess to Him, right? And that's why we need to reveal things very specifically. God, I'm struggling with pornography, and my marriage is struggling with pornography because I'm addicted to this. Lord, I'm struggling because I'm unwilling to talk to my spouse about the specific things that are important to me that I'm struggling with right now in our relationship. Ugh. Or let's get down to the kernel. God, I'm struggling with our relationship. You've never let me down. Even in the worst of times, and I've denied you, I know that you've always held my best interests at heart. Please forgive me for not trusting you more. Help me to see my flaws as you see them and be as excited as you when I overcome them and when I see them clearly to face them. What do you think? Good idea? Try to face those things. There's a psychotherapist, Nathan Fielis, who says there's a grass is greener syndrome. Sometimes this is a burden to our vows, right? It's the idea there is always something better that we are missing. So rather than experiencing stability, security, and satisfaction in the present environment, the feeling is there is more and better elsewhere, and anything less than ideal won't do. I think the cliche should be changed to this: the grass is only as green as we keep it. I thought that was pretty clever, that last phrase. The grass is only as green as we keep it. Okay? Let's go back to the Bible. Suffering for your vows. What was Ruth's vow, and what did she suffer? And what was part of that gain that you see within this vow? I'm going to put you on the spot. I'm going to call on you. Don't look at me.
Well, if I remember her vow, is that she's going to stay with Naomi through thick and thin, and your God's going to be my God, and I'll go where you go. Just basically tying yourself to her, but Naomi didn't have anything to offer, and so
Yes.
she ended up poor to the point of relying on others' generosity just to have a meal, have a place to lay their heads. I mean, it wasn't much of a life.
Right. So she was more or less vowing herself to pair herself, partner herself, commit herself to a person who is now homeless, right? She was homeless in the middle of a famine. And so they go back and they find Boaz, and she's gleaning. She's getting what homeless people get, seeking the handout, increment by increment. Long story short, what? She's redeemed. She's redeemed. Okay? How about Job? Big commitment here. Satan says, let me do anything I can to Job, and I assure you, God, that he will curse you, and he will show that he is a fair weather friend to you. So he held fast his integrity. He did not curse God. He wished for death. It was tough. What a burden. Have a great family. Everything's going great. But then one servant comes back. This happened to your sheep. This happened to your cattle. One after another. Wave after wave. Same day, wasn't it? Or was it? Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was consecutive days. But then one day, comes back, hey, all your children are dead. House fell on them. I alone came back to tell you this. I was the only survivor. What was his commitment? Fell to his knees, crying out to the Lord, naked I came from the womb, naked I will return. Okay? Dust to dust. Gracious God that you have your life. And in the end, keeping to that vow, blessed beyond imagination. Okay? Those are some obstacles that we have as people. I'm running out of time here. For God, the obstacle of the vows that he has always been the people. You look in Hebrews chapter 8, verses 7 through 9, talks about the covenant that he had with them. The first covenant that he makes with them as the people of God. And he finds fault with them, the text says. Hebrews 8, verse 7 beginning. That's one of the problems that God has with keeping his vows. He's unable to keep the other person's vow that he's committed to. Okay, final point. Renewing your vows. I thought it interesting, Jonah's prayer in chapter 2, verses 9 and 10, when he's in the fish. He says, but I, with the voice of thanksgiving, will sacrifice to you what I have vowed, I will pay. Salvation belongs to the Lord. And the Lord spoke to the fish, and it vomited Jonah out upon the dry land. Okay, interesting. Jonah's able to remember that he had messed up, and his vows, then hopefully keep his vows, but you see that he still doesn't come full circle with understanding what God's doing with him in preaching and teaching the lost. Okay? Now, recall the first covenant's flaw, the people of God, Hebrews 8, 7 through 9. Jeremiah 31 and following talks about a new covenant that he would put on their hearts. And instead of people not knowing who they are, these people would already be vowed to God. Talks about Christians in that sense. Okay? And I think it's interesting as we've run out of time here. But Revelation 22, look at this passage as we conclude. Revelation 22. I've got to read this to you. Verse 12 beginning. Okay, we've talked about marriage a lot. Talked about the struggles in it. Just talked about some obstacles and some good things about them. But the reality is marriage is something that glorifies God. And it's something that he has put in place to give us a deeper understanding of really that commitment, in my mind, and the depth of vows, and understand our place in marriage. So if you look at Revelation 22, beginning in verse 12. Behold, I am coming soon, bringing my recompense with me, to repay to each one for what he has done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last, the beginning and the end. Blessed are those who wash their robes, so that they may have the right to the tree of life, and that they may enter the city by the gates. Outside are the dogs and sorcerers and the sexually immoral and murderers and idolaters and everyone who loves and practices falsehood. We might, for our purposes, put in there people who don't keep their vows. I, Jesus, have sent my angel to testify to you about these things. For the churches, I am the root and the descendant of David, the bright morning star. The Spirit and the bride say, "Come." And let the one who hears say, "Come." And let the one who is thirsty come. Let the one who desires take the water of life without price. I warn everyone who hears the words of the prophecy of this book, if anyone adds to them, God will add to him the plagues described in this book. And if anyone takes away from the words of the book of the prophecy, God will take away his share in the tree of life and in the holy city, which are described in this book. That's a pretty intense if there, to following a vow of keeping this word pure, not. Right? And that's where we've come full circle. I'm keeping the vow to glorify God, or I'm breaking it. And then this passage identifies it further to the extent of death eternal. Okay. Let's sing these two songs now as we close. Number 159.